Private Cole, you call that a salute? My grandmother could do better blindfolded. The barracks erupted in laughter. Boots thudded on the floor. Metal bunks rattled with fists pounding in rhythm to the humiliation. Cole's face burned red, his arm trembling in the frozen salute he'd been holding for too long. The drill sergeant's voice cut through the air like a blade. Dead weight. That's all you are. Dead. Weight. Nobody dared breathe. Nobody dared stand with him. In that silence, Cole realized something. This was the battlefield before the battlefield, and he was already losing ground. That first week of boot camp was hell. Every mistake felt magnified under the fluorescent lights and the relentless eyes of men who already decided who belonged and who didn't. Cole, with his country drawl and second-hand boots, was easy prey. He came from a farm where money was tight, where he'd learned to fix tractors with duct tape and baling wire. But here, that counted for nothing. Here they saw only a kid who stuttered when nervous, who wore hand-me-downs, who looked like the army was doing him a favor. The others smelled weakness, and in a barracks, weakness is blood in the water. Mason led the charge. Broad shoulders, loud mouth, the kind of recruit who thought volume equaled authority. Hey, Cole! Mason barked one night, tossing a crumpled shirt into his bunk. Fold that for me. You like playing house, don't you? Laughter rippled through the room again. Cole clenched his jaw, folded his own sheet tighter, corners sharp enough to slice bread, and said nothing. The insult stuck, but so did the silence of the one man across the room. Daniels. Daniels didn't laugh. He just watched, jaw tight, eyes flickering with something Cole couldn't name. Pity? Respect? Fear of becoming the next target? Inspections were the worst. Boots lined up perfectly by every bunk. Blankets tucked with precision, dog tags clinking in nervous fingers. Sergeant Ramirez stormed through like a hurricane. He'd stop at Cole's rack every time. Pathetic, sloppy, weak. He'd strip the bed, kick the boots, and leave Cole rebuilding while the others smirked. It was ritual now, a daily sacrifice to the gods of discipline. And yet, Cole rebuilt it. Every single time. No complaint, no excuse. Just discipline. The kind his father had beaten into him long before he wore a uniform. Chow Hall offered no relief. Mason and his buddies would crowd the line, jostle Cole's tray, whisper loud. Enough for everyone to hear. Don't drop it, farm boy. Don't want to waste Uncle Sam's food. Once Mason slapped the bread right off Cole's tray. The loaf skidded across the floor, soaked in spilled soup. Cole bent down, picked it up, set it back on the tray, and ate it anyway. Bitter laughter filled the hall, but Daniels turned away, jaw tight again. That silence, louder than words, meant something. Cole didn't know what yet. Nights in the barracks dragged longest. The mocking would fade, replaced by snores and the hiss of boots drying under bunks. Cole lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying every insult, every shove, every smirk. His fists itched, but he never swung back. Deep down, he knew fists wouldn't change anything. Only time, only discipline, only proving himself would. And so he waited, quiet, patient, a storm gathering strength behind a calm face. But there were cracks. During rifle drill, Mason smirked as Cole fumbled with the bolt. You're gonna get someone killed out there, he sneered. Ramirez barked at Cole until his ears rang, voice like artillery. Cole gritted his teeth, forced his hand steady, and finished the drill. His movements weren't perfect, but they were deliberate. Daniels caught his eye across the line, just for a second. A nod, so slight it might have been imagination. But to Cole, it was fuel. Humiliation hardened him. Every insult pressed deeper, but it didn't break him. It carved him, shaped him, turned him into something the others couldn't see yet. Mason thought he was just a punching bag. Ramirez thought he was hopeless. But Cole carried something they didn't understand, the quiet endurance of a man who had been underestimated his whole life. He was no stranger to ridicule. He had heard it from teachers, neighbors, even relatives who told him he'd never amount to anything. And every time he pushed through. Every time he came back harder. The nights got colder, the drills harsher, the jokes sharper. But so did Cole. Each day his sheets folded tighter, his boots shined brighter, his push-ups doubled. Nobody noticed, or maybe they didn't want to. But Daniels did. Daniels saw the sweat pooling under Cole's bunk, the calluses thickening on his hands, the eyes that never lowered even when his body sagged. That silent ally didn't speak, didn't defend, but his gaze said, "I see you. Keep going." What Cole didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the real test hadn't even begun. The day was coming, when humiliation would meet opportunity, when all the laughter would dry up in their throats. And when it came, every insult, every smirk, every dead weight would flip like a coin in the air. The farm boy, the stutter, the hand-me-down boots, none of it would matter. What would matter was the fire he'd kept hidden, waiting for the moment to ignite. And that moment was closer than anyone realized. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. It hammered down on the base, soaking the obstacle course until the mud sucked at boots like quicksand. That morning we lined up on the field, water dripping from helmets, uniforms plastered to our skin. Sergeant Ramirez barked orders from under his poncho, bone dry while we shivered. "Move it, recruits! This ain't summer camp. The battlefield doesn't care if you're wet." His eyes landed on Cole, and you could feel the shift in the air. "And you, farm boy, let's see if the mud swallows you faster than it swallows the rest." The others laughed. Cole just kept his eyes forward, jaw set, like he'd already made peace with whatever was coming. When the whistle blew, chaos erupted. Men scrambled through the muck, climbing ropes slick with rain, diving under barbed wire, bodies coated in brown sludge. Cole stumbled right at the start, face first into the mud, and Mason's voice rang out, cruel and sharp. "Look at him! Can't even crawl without kissing the ground." Laughter again, echoing across the field. Cole spat mud, pulled himself forward and kept moving. His arms shook, legs slipping with every step, but he never stopped. Not once. Daniels ran 2 stations ahead, glancing back only briefly, eyes narrowing. He didn't say a word, but he noticed. By the time we hit the wall climb, Cole was far behind. Mason perched at the top, smirking down at him like a king watching a fool. "Need a ladder, country boy," he called out. Ramirez's voice cut in like thunder. "Shut your mouth, Mason. Focus on your own climb." That silence that followed was sharper than any laugh, and Mason's smirk faded, but only for a second. Cole's hand slipped once, twice, 3 times before he finally dragged himself up, chest heaving, fingers raw. When he rolled over the top and slid down the other side, no one clapped, no one cheered, but Daniel's eyes lingered again. Small things, easy to miss, but Cole noticed. The chow hall that night was buzzing with the usual noise, trays clattering, voices loud. Mason, never one to waste an audience, started in again. "Hey, Cole, you planning on sleeping through the next exercise too?" He shoved past him in line, knocking half the food off Cole's tray. Rice scattered across the floor, beans smeared under boots. Some recruits laughed, some looked away, pretending not to see. Cole bent down, picked up the tray, wiped it off on his sleeve, and moved forward without a word. Ramirez's voice suddenly barked from across the hall. "Mason, you think this is a comedy club?" Mason froze mid-laugh, face pale. Ramirez didn't say another word, but that silence carried weight. Mason sat down quieter than usual, though his glare at Cole promised the insults weren't done. Cole sat alone as always, eating quickly, eyes down. That night he noticed Daniels hesitating near the end of the table, tray in hand. Daniels didn't join him, too risky, but as he passed he dropped a slice of bread onto Cole's tray. No words, no glance, just a quiet gesture. Cole looked at the bread, then at Daniel's back as he walked away. That moment stuck with him. Small kindnesses carry more weight when you're drowning in humiliation. Nights blurred together. Barracks smelled of damp uniforms and polish. The lights went out, but sleep never came easy. Mason whispered insults from his bunk, sometimes loud enough for others to laugh, sometimes just to needle Cole in the dark. "You don't belong here. Everyone knows it. You're dragging us down." Cole would lie still, fists clenched under the blanket, forcing his breath steady. He wanted to fight, wanted to scream back, But something deeper kept him silent. Dignity. Patience. He knew Fist would prove Mason right. So he endured. Quietly. Waiting. One night, long after lights out, Ramirez stormed in. Up! Everyone up! Gear on! Formation in 2 minutes! The scramble was chaos. Boots slamming, belts snapping, rifles grabbed half assembled. Cole, still half asleep, dropped his canteen. Mason sneered. Can't even dress yourself. Cole didn't answer, just shoved his gear together and sprinted into formation, breath ragged. They stood at attention in the freezing night, rain spitting against helmets. Ramirez paced slowly, eyes hunting. He stopped in front of Cole, face unreadable. Then suddenly Ramirez shoved his rifle into Cole's hands. Farm boy, you're on fire watch tonight. Everyone else, back to bed. Groans erupted behind him, relief mixed with laughter. Mason whispered, perfect. Babysitting duty for the reject. Cole just nodded, took the rifle, and stood his post in the rain while the others crawled back under warm blankets. Hours passed, the base silent except for the hiss of rain and Cole's boots shifting in the mud. His uniform clung cold to his skin, fingers stiff around the weapon. Somewhere around 300, Daniels approached quietly, pretending to check his own gear. He didn't say much, just a low voice, barely audible. Don't let them break you. Then he walked on, leaving Cole with those words echoing louder than any insult Mason had thrown all week. Days blurred with more drills, more jeers, more silent endurance. Cole began to change. Push-ups doubled. Rifle drills smoothed out. His boots, once scuffed, now shined like mirrors. Nobody clapped, nobody admitted it, but the shift was there. Even Mason noticed, though he'd never say it out loud. And then came the run, the one that broke nearly everyone. 10 miles in full gear, rain hammering down again, mud thick as cement. Ramirez ran them mercilessly, shouting, keep up, or stay behind forever. Mason bolted ahead, cocky as always, while Cole trudged steadily, never stopping, never slowing. Halfway through, Mason twisted his ankle in the mud, stumbled, cursed loudly. No one stopped. No one cared. But Cole slowed. He glanced back. For a second, you could see the war in his eyes. Keep going or go back. He went back, slung Mason's arm over his shoulder, carried him step after step. Mason spat curses the whole way. Put me down. I don't need your help. But Cole kept going, silent, steady, both of them crossing the finish line, dead last. The silence when they crossed was deafening. No laughter, no jeers, just the sight of Cole, mud-soaked, dragging the same man who mocked him endlessly. Ramirez stood stone still, eyes locked on Cole. Then slowly, Ramirez nodded. Just once. No words. But that nod said everything. Recognition, respect, something earned the hard way. Mason turned his face, shame written all over it. Daniels, standing near the back, finally allowed himself the smallest of smiles. That night in the barracks, for the first time, no one mocked Cole. The air was heavy, quiet, as if something unspoken had shifted. Mason kept to himself. Ramirez said nothing, but everyone knew. Cole had crossed a line no one expected him to cross. He wasn't deadweight anymore. He was something else, something stronger. And though no one said it out loud, every man in that barracks felt it. What none of them realized was that this was only the beginning. The real test was still coming, the one that would flip everything upside down. And when it did, every insult, every moment in the mud would come back like a shadow waiting to be burned away by the light. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The field exercise started before dawn, when the fog still hugged the ground and the cold bit through every layer of gear we had on. Sergeant Ramirez gathered us in a circle, his face unreadable under the brim of his cap. Tonight is your final drill, he said. Night navigation, full gear, live simulation. No excuses. You either move as a unit or you fail as a unit. His eyes flicked over to Cole like a knife glancing off metal. Some of you already know who's dead weight. The jab wasn't subtle. Mason snickered, loud enough for the others to hear, and whispered, better pack a stretcher for the farm boy. Nobody corrected him. Nobody ever did. The teams were split up quickly. Cole was placed with the so-called weak squad, the ones Ramirez believed wouldn't make it. Mason was sent with the stronger group, the Golden Boys. The difference was clear. As the squads lined up, Mason called out, "Don't get lost out there, Cole. We don't have time to send a search party." The others laughed. Cole adjusted his gear, quiet as ever, eyes locked on the map in his hand. He didn't say a word, but I could see the tension in his jaw. Daniels, standing next to him in the same squad, gave the faintest nod, like he was silently telling him, "Just keep going." The whistle blew and we moved into the woods. The air was damp, the ground uneven, roots catching under our boots. Within minutes, the radio crackled and died. Static, then silence. Panic rippled through the squad. "Great," one recruit muttered. "Now we're screwed." Someone else added, "We'll never find our way without comms." Eyes darted toward Cole, half expecting him to fumble. Mason's voice wasn't here, but his shadow still was, living in their doubt. Cole held the map tighter, scanning the terrain around him. "This way," he said simply, pointing north. "I memorized the contour lines before we left." The others hesitated. Who would trust the farm boy? Daniels broke the silence first. "You heard him. Move!" And so they did. Hours passed, mud soaked through boots, straps dug into shoulders, sweat mixed with the cold. The forest seemed endless. More than once someone muttered, "We're lost." Cole kept guiding, his eyes sharp, reading every ridge and slope like he'd been walking these woods his whole life. Every turn he called was right. Slowly the squad's doubts started to crack. They weren't willing to admit it, but he was keeping them alive out there. Then it happened. Henderson slipped. One misstep on wet leaves, and he dropped into a ravine, screaming as he tumbled down. The squad froze, peering over the edge at the dark drop. "He's gone," someone whispered. Henderson's voice came back weak but desperate. "I can't move my leg." Fear spread fast. No one wanted to go down there. Too steep, too risky. But Cole didn't hesitate. He unhooked his rope, tied it around his waist, and said, "Lower me." The squad gaped at him. "You're insane," one recruit stammered. "You'll fall too." Cole's answer was short. "He's one of us. We don't leave him." Before they could argue, Daniels grabbed the rope, anchoring it around a tree. "Let him go," he said firmly. "We've got you." Cole descended slowly, boots scraping against the wet rock, hands burning on the rope. Henderson was pale, leg bent wrong, fear in his eyes. "Don't move," Cole said calmly. He looped the rope under Henderson's arms, ignoring his own shaking muscles. The climb back up was brutal. Mud slipped under his boots, rocks crumbled, the weight doubled with Henderson leaning on him. Twice they nearly fell. Twice the rope cut deep into his palms. But Cole didn't stop. Step by step, teeth gritted, he hauled Henderson back up to the ridge. By the time they rolled over the edge, both of them were shaking, soaked, and bleeding, but alive. The squad stared in stunned silence. Nobody laughed, nobody mocked. Henderson, voice trembling, said, "You saved me." Cole just nodded, too exhausted to speak. Daniels put a hand on his shoulder, firm and steady. "You kept us together out here," he said. For the first time, Cole let himself breathe. He wasn't invisible anymore. The march to extraction wasn't easy. Every step hurt. Henderson limped with support, but they made it. And when they reached the rally point, something nobody expected happened. The so-called weak squad was the first to arrive. Mason's squad stumbled in almost 20 minutes later, looking ragged, tempers flaring. When Mason saw Cole standing tall at the front, Henderson leaning on him for support, his smirk died on his lips. He couldn't speak. None of them could. Ramirez stepped forward, scanning both squads, his gaze locked on Cole. For the first time since day one, there was no insult, no sneer, just silence. And then slowly Ramirez said, "How the hell did you beat them here?" The question hung heavy in the air. Nobody answered. Cole didn't need to. The evidence stood right in front of them, but Mason couldn't let it go. "It's a fluke," he snapped, voice sharp with anger. "He got lucky, that's all." Henderson, still leaning on Cole, turned his head sharply. "Lucky?" His voice cracked with disbelief. "He carried me out of a ravine, Mason. While you were busy running your mouth, He saved my life. The squad shifted uneasily. For the first time, Mason's words didn't carry weight. His power was slipping, and he knew it. The silence that followed was louder than any shout. Ramirez didn't argue. He didn't praise either. But his eyes lingered on Cole longer than anyone else. That look, sharp and measuring, said more than words ever could. Something had changed. Everyone felt it. The farm boy, the reject, the dead weight. He wasn't that anymore. Not to them. Not to Ramirez. And definitely not to Mason. Back at base, the barracks were quiet that night. No jokes, no insults. The usual noise had vanished. Cole sat on his bunk, cleaning mud from his boots, hands still raw from the rope. Daniels walked by, paused, and said quietly, "What you did out there, nobody's going to forget that." He didn't smile, didn't linger, just kept walking. But Cole knew. The respect was real now, hard-earned, undeniable. Later, as the lights dimmed, Mason sat on his bunk, silent for once. His glare had no power anymore. Henderson across the room shifted painfully on his mattress and said into the silence, "Thanks again, Cole." The words echoed in the stillness, and for the first time, the barracks didn't feel like a prison. It felt like the tide had turned. The next morning, formation was tense. Ramirez's boots hit the pavement in rhythm as he passed each recruit. When he stopped in front of Cole, everyone held their breath. Ramirez studied him, eyes steady, and then said, "Not bad, Private. Not bad at all." That was it. No applause, no speech. But in the Army, respect rarely comes wrapped in pretty words. Sometimes it's just a tone, a glance, a shift you can feel in the air. And that was enough. Cole had crossed a line no one expected him to, from humiliated to respected, from invisible to undeniable. And though the real test was still ahead, everyone knew it now. The farm boy wasn't going anywhere. He was one of them. And maybe, just maybe, he was the one who would lead them when things got worse. What none of them realized yet was that worse was coming, faster than anyone imagined. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The base felt different after that field exercise. Quieter. Not in the sense that people stopped talking, but in the way they looked at Cole now. There was no more laughing when he walked past. No more whispered insults when he fumbled with gear. The mocking silence had been replaced with something heavier. Respect. It didn't come easy, not from everyone, but it was there, in the way heads turned when he entered the chow hall, in the way conversations hushed for just a second before picking back up. And for Mason, that silence was worse than the laughter ever was. He used to own the room. Now the room belonged to someone else. Mason tried to hold on, of course. At breakfast, he leaned across the table, sneering. "One good night in the woods doesn't make you a soldier." His tone was sharp, desperate. Cole just kept eating, eyes on his tray, movement steady. Daniels, sitting nearby, broke the silence with 3 words that hit harder than any insult. "He carried you." The table froze. Mason's face flushed crimson. He shoved back his chair, fists clenched. But no one followed his lead this time. The moment passed, but the fracture stayed. Mason wasn't the voice people listened to anymore. He knew it, and worse, everyone else knew it too. Drill the next morning was brutal. Ramirez made sure of that. "You think one exercise means you're ready?" he barked. "You haven't proven a damn thing." His eyes locked on Cole like a rifle sight. "You want respect, Private? Earn it. Again." The platoon hit the ground, push-ups until arms shook, mud seeping into uniforms. Cole's body screamed, but he didn't quit. He never did. And when Ramirez's voice roared, "Up, down, Cole matched every command, face set, sweat dripping, eyes forward. For once, Ramirez didn't stop him to humiliate him. He just watched, measuring, waiting. That afternoon, the squad sat cleaning weapons in the barracks, the air heavy with oil and silence. Mason muttered, loud enough for all to hear, "We're only as strong as our weakest link." Everyone knew who he meant. This time, Henderson slammed his cleaning rod onto the table. "Shut up, Mason. You weren't the one pulling yourself out of that ravine." The words cut like a blade. Mason's mouth opened, then closed, no comeback left. Cole didn't speak, Didn't need to. His allies were speaking for him now. The real turning point came at formation. Ramirez called the platoon into line, boots snapping against the pavement. He paced slowly, hands clasped behind his back, eyes scanning each man. Some of you, he began, think you're leaders. You run your mouth, make noise, pretend to carry weight. But when the mud rises, when the rope cuts into your hands, when lives hang on the line, all that noise means nothing. He stopped in front of Mason. The silence was suffocating. And some of you, Ramirez continued, turning deliberately toward Cole, you don't say a damn word. You just act. And action is what matters. The platoon shifted, glances darting. Ramirez's next words dropped like a hammer. Private Cole, front and center. Cole stepped forward, heart pounding, eyes locked straight ahead. Ramirez stared at him for a long moment, the kind of silence that digs into your chest. Then he spoke. You just redefined this platoon. It was like the world stopped. For weeks, Cole had been nothing but a target, the butt of every joke, the farm boy destined to fail. Now the same sergeant who tore him down in front of everyone was standing there, giving him recognition in front of the entire unit. Mason's fists clenched at his sides, his face pale with rage, but he couldn't say a word. Not here, not now. Henderson's eyes burned with pride. Daniel's faint nod carried more weight than any applause. And the platoon? They saluted. Not loud, not dramatic, but enough. A wave of respect that silenced every doubt, every insult, every cruel laugh. The barracks that night felt different. No jokes thrown across bunks, no whispers in the dark. Just the steady rhythm of boots being polished, rifles being cleaned, men preparing quietly for the next day. Cole sat on his bunk, wiping down his weapon, when Daniels passed by. He paused, then said simply, Told you they'd see it. No smile, no pat on the back, just quiet truth. Cole nodded, words caught in his throat. Respect doesn't need noise. Sometimes silence says more. Mason stayed quiet the rest of the night. The same man who had once filled every room with his voice now sat in the corner, isolated, eyes dark with resentment. It wasn't just Cole who had changed. It was the balance of the entire platoon. Power had shifted, and nothing Mason could say would take it back. He had mocked, ridiculed, tried to break him. But Cole hadn't just endured, he had risen. And Mason, for all his strength and noise, was left in the shadow of that rise. Later, as the lights went out, Cole lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the sounds of the barracks around him strangely comforting. He wasn't invisible anymore. He wasn't dead weight. He was a soldier. And though he knew the hardest tests were still ahead, he also knew this. The platoon would never see him the same way again. Ramirez's words echoed in his mind, a quiet drumbeat that wouldn't fade. You just redefined this platoon. That sentence alone had wiped away weeks of humiliation, months of doubt. It had turned every scar into proof, every insult into fuel. Respect had been earned, not given. And in the military, that's the only way it counts. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The barracks were quiet that night, but it wasn't the same silence from before. This one carried weight, like everyone was waiting for something unspoken. Cole sat on his bunk, boots lined perfectly, rifle clean to a shine, staring at the floor as if it could answer all the questions in his head. Daniels across the room finally broke the silence. You know, he said, voice low so only Cole could hear, you're the kind of soldier I'd follow into combat. Simple words, but in this world, words like that meant more than medals. Cole didn't answer right away. He just nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat, because he knew Daniels wasn't the type to waste breath on empty praise. The next morning, the sun cut sharp against the parade ground. The whole platoon stood in formation, boots snapping, shoulders squared. Ramirez marched down the line, eyes cold, scanning every detail. Nobody dared move. When he stopped in front of Cole, the air seemed to tighten. He didn't shout this time. He didn't call him weak or dead weight. He just gave a single nod. No words, just that small gesture. But in the Army, a nod from a drill sergeant can carry more power than a speech. And every man in That line saw it. Mason's jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes forward. No one was laughing now. The power had shifted for good. Later in the chow hall, the usual noise filled the room. Trays clattering, voices overlapping, the smell of powdered eggs and burnt toast. But when Cole walked in, something subtle happened. A path opened without being asked for. Men shifted, making room. He wasn't at the edge of the group anymore. He was in it. Henderson caught his eye, lifted his coffee and a quiet toast. Daniel sat beside him without hesitation. Mason stayed at the far end, chewing in silence, his stare burning holes in his tray. That silence was its own kind of defeat. That evening, after lights out, Cole lay awake, listening to the steady rhythm of breathing around him. For the first time since he'd arrived, the barracks didn't feel like an enemy. It felt like a home, rough and unpolished, but a place where respect had finally been earned. He thought back to the nights of humiliation, the whispers in the dark, the laughter when he failed. All of it had been fuel, every insult shaping the soldier he was becoming. Weakness had turned into strength, doubt into determination. And now, he wasn't invisible anymore. He was part of the unit. The final image came the next morning. Cole stood at attention, the flag rising against the sky, the anthem rolling across the base. The wind tugged at his uniform, but he didn't move, didn't blink. Around him, the platoon stood tall, and for the first time, he felt it deep in his chest. He belonged here, not because anyone gave him a place, but because he had carved it out with his own hands, his own grit. That's the thing about honor. It isn't handed down. It's forged, painfully, quietly, until the day it shines so bright no one can deny it. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The last image I want you to hold in your mind is simple. The platoon stands in perfect formation, the morning sun cutting sharp across their faces. The flag climbs slowly up the pole, snapping in the wind. And there, in the front row, stands Private Cole. The farm boy once mocked and humiliated, now shoulders squared, eyes locked forward, belonging not because anyone allowed him to, but because he fought for that place with grit no one could deny. Behind him, silence. Not the silence of ridicule, but of respect. Even Ramirez, the hard-edged sergeant who once called him deadweight, gives the faintest nod. It's not much, but in the Army, sometimes a nod is worth more than a medal. Mason stares straight ahead, jaw tight, carrying the weight of shame that only time can ease. The platoon salutes together, and in that single motion, every insult, every smirk, every long night has been repaid in full. And that's where the lesson lives. We all know life isn't fair. Injustice is real. Prejudice is real. Sometimes you'll be pushed down, silenced, humiliated until you feel like nothing. But if you hold the line, if you keep moving when it's easier to quit, you'll find that actions speak louder than words. Respect isn't handed out. It's earned, drop by drop, through sweat, through sacrifice, through silence that one day breaks wide open. Cole's story reminds us that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And in the end, strength earns its own kind of justice, brotherhood, resilience, honor. Those things don't wear out. They only grow. If this story hit you in the gut, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you've seen moments like this, on base, in the field, or in life. Tap the like button to show your support and subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Until then, stay strong, stay steady, and remember, we're all in this together.